Hey guys, quick creepy fact. Only 20% of you watching are subscribed. It's totally free and helps me write more scary stories like this one. Thank you for the support. Now let's dive right in. You'd think after scrubbing vomit out of gas station bathrooms and spending 2 summers in a hot dog costume trying to convince tourists to buy stale pretzels, I'd know better than to trust a job that sounds too good to be true. But nope. There it was, wedged between a lost cat ad and a 50-cent jerky coupon in the crusty back pages of the Red Hill Gazette. Night janitor needed, Red Hill Cemetery. $28, flexible hours. I actually laughed when I saw it. Cemetery gig? Please. I don't believe in ghosts, goblins, or any of that Scooby-Doo nonsense. Dead is dead. I figured the hardest part of the job would be not tripping over a headstone in the dark. Walk the paths, sweep some leaves, toss out a few beer bottles left by teenagers cursing their exes with knockoff witchcraft. I could do that in my sleep. So I called the number. Showed up the next day with a travel mug full of hazelnut caffeine and exactly 0 expectations. And for a while, I was right. The job was easy, until he handed me the rules. Eddie, the other janitor, or as he so dramatically introduced himself, the groundskeeper, was the kind of guy who looked like he'd fought in every war and lost every argument. He was all grizzle and flannel and smelled faintly like gasoline and smoked meat. Said maybe 10 words total when I got there. He handed me a broom with one hand and with the other, a piece of paper. Yellowed, creased, the corners curled like dried leaves. It looked like it had been typed up on a machine last used to forge confessions in the 1940s. Ink faded and smudged. I blinked at it. Ah, what's this? He didn't even meet my eyes, just muttered, "Read it, follow it," and then walked away like he had a hot date with a recliner and a 6-pack of beers. Before he disappeared entirely into the mist, because of course there was mist, he tossed one more little nugget of wisdom over his shoulder. "Only folks here tonight are you and Preston." Ah, yes, Preston. I'd seen him before. He worked the security booth at the front gate. Looked like he came with the property. Old as the crypts, sipping black coffee and staring into the dark like it owed him money. Guy had to be at least 75. If something did go down in this cemetery, which again shouldn't, Preston wasn't exactly backup. Unless the danger involved squinting real hard or filing a stern complaint with the afterlife. Still, I gave him a polite nod when I passed. He raised his flashlight half an inch in acknowledgement. His version of a salute, I guess. And then it happened. That shiver. You know the kind. The one that isn't quite cold, but crawls up your spine like static electricity, got bored and decided to get personal. It settled at the base of my neck like a threat that hadn't decided whether to whisper or scream. I brushed it off. Probably just the chill, or maybe my imagination acting out. But something about watching Eddie's taillights disappear beyond the rusted cemetery gates made my stomach twist. Like I'd just been left behind at the wrong sleepover. You know, the kind where people don't make it to morning. I was alone. Sort of. Me and a man who probably fought off the invention of Wi-Fi with a pitchfork. And the rules. Right? The paper was still in my hand, feeling way heavier than it should have. I sighed and unfolded it, expecting "clock out by sunrise" or "don't touch the dead flowers." Instead, typed in faded ink in the kind of font you'd find on a ransom note from a haunted typewriter, "Rules for the groundskeeper," and below that, 5 rules. Just 5. But every one of them made my eyebrows attempt to flee my face. I read them out loud. Because I'm that person. The kind who says things out loud to prove how ridiculous they are. Rule 1. At exactly 1 a.m., place a fresh bouquet of white lilies on grave 302, Eleanor May Finch. Do not use roses. Do not be late. Okay. Floral offering? Weirdly wholesome. Creepy specific. But I'm not about to get haunted by someone named Eleanor May. She sounds like she bakes cookies and judges your posture. Rule 2. If you see a man in a black suit, do not speak to him. If he asks you a question, do not answer. Keep your eyes down and walk away. Do not run. Cool, cool. Love that for me. Definitely not screaming on the inside. Rule 3. Between 2 and 3 a.m., avoid looking into any reflective surface, including puddles, especially puddles. If you accidentally do and see something that isn't you, ignore it. Do not react. Puddles are off limits now. Noted. Guess I'll walk around like a Sims character with no pathfinding. Rule 4. If you hear whistling near the old chapel, do not investigate. Go inside the caretaker's shed and lock the door. Wait exactly 10 minutes. No more. No less. Whistling? Nope. Seen that horror movie. I die in the first act if I follow the sound. Rule 5. You may hear crying from grave 119. Do not comfort. If it continues past midnight, place a single copper coin on the headstone and leave immediately. Just a crying ghost. Casual. Wonder if she takes Venmo. I stared at the list for a long moment, half expecting a hidden camera crew to pop out of the bushes. But the only thing I heard was the wind rustling through the trees. 5 rules. That's it. Easy money, I told myself. And yet, why did it feel like I'd just agreed to babysit Satan's neighborhood watch? A flashlight beam suddenly flicked on beside me. I gasped like I'd stepped on a Lego barefoot in the dark. It was Preston, appearing out of nowhere like a ghost with a retirement fund. I nearly smacked him with my broom. He didn't flinch, just squinted at the paper in my hand like he could read it from 10 feet away. You better follow them, he said, voice all deep and almost dead. We want to walk out of here in the morning, right? I blinked. What? He smiled. And I swear it wasn't a friendly grandpa smile. It was knowing. A crooked little grin that whispered, you'll see. Then he gave his flashlight a casual tap against his thigh and turned, walking off into the dark like a cowboy in the world's worst western. I looked back at the rules still clutched in my hand, then rolled my eyes and jammed the paper into my back pocket. Sure, I muttered. Don't talk to Mr. Blacksuit, avoid puddle goblins, and offer ghost coins to sobbing strangers. Totally normal. I picked up the broom, muttering to myself the whole time. Because apparently, this was my life now. Ivy, night janitor, keeper of cursed cemetery vibes. I'd been sweeping for about an hour, maybe less. The moon had clocked in for its own graveyard shift, hanging heavy and bright in the sky like it was judging my life choices. Most of the path was clear already. Some old leaves, a couple crushed beer cans, and one weird Barbie head I chose not to ask questions about. You'd be amazed at how peaceful a cemetery can feel when you pretend it's just a badly landscaped park. Then the peace broke. It started small. A sound I couldn't place, low, soft like a whisper. I paused mid-sweep, broom angled like I was about to yeet a squirrel, and just listened. There it was again. Not a breeze, not branches, not anything natural, it was whistling. 3 notes, high, then low, then high again. The sound came from the direction of the old chapel. And I, being Ivy, brave, brilliant, and apparently allergic to self-preservation, decided to investigate. Now in my defense, I did think about the rules. Rule 4. I really did. But something Eddie said had been rattling around in my skull. The cemetery's locked after sundown. Meaning? No visitors. No curious teens. No ghost hunting TikTokers with ring lights and a pentagram app. So whoever was whistling, they weren't supposed to be here. And I'll be damned if I was gonna let some greasy little vandal mess with my first decent-paying job. I straightened up, puffed out my chest, and marched into the dark with the confidence of a horror movie side character about to die horribly. My boots crunched over gravel. The broom in my hand suddenly felt more like a useless cosplay accessory than a weapon. The air got colder, heavier, like breathing through cotton soaked in nerves. The chapel crept into view, old, tilted, half-eaten by moss. It looked like it had tried to retire 50 years ago, and no one let it. A single stained glass window had caved in, and the door hung crooked on its rusted hinges. The whistling grew louder, same 3 notes, over and over. Then it stopped. Dead silence. I froze. My ears rang in the sudden stillness. Every instinct I had screamed back away slowly, but my curiosity? Oh, she's a dumb little gremlin. Then came the giggle. A child's giggle. Then another, and another. Layered like echoes bouncing in a nightmare, coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once. I spun around so fast my spine cracked. And that's when I saw him. A boy, maybe 10 years old, standing just past the nearest grave, bathed in moonlight like it had been poured just for him. His skin was gray. His clothes, ripped, stained, old-fashioned, like a kid who'd climbed straight out of a Victorian time tale. And his smile, it was wrong, too wide, too sharp. The corners of his mouth cracked open like dry paper, blood trickling from the split skin. But he didn't seem to notice, or care. He just kept smiling. Then, he puckered his lips and started whistling, the same 3 notes, high, low, high. He took a step toward me, then then another. His eyes didn't blink, his lips didn't move. I didn't think, I didn't run. I screamed, loud. Both hands slapped over my ears like that would help block out the sound or the image of his split-cheek grin. And the moment I did, he vanished. Just gone. Like he'd never been there. I stood there shaking, my broom on the ground, my heart trying to punch its way out of my ribcage. The silence was somehow worse than the giggling. Like the cemetery was holding its breath. I darted back toward the main path and slammed myself against the nearest street lamp like it was home base in a game of tag with Satan. Hands trembling, I yanked the crumpled sheet of rules from my pocket and smoothed it against my thigh with shaking fingers. Rule 4. If you hear whistling near the old chapel, do not investigate. Go inside the caretaker's shed and lock the door. Wait exactly 10 minutes, no more, no less. My stomach flipped so hard it did a cartwheel. That kid. That thing. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't some local kid with too much free time and a very messed up makeup kit. Unless someone hired a child actor with detachable jaws and the ability to vanish like smoke, I'd just broken rule number 4. I was still mid-freak out when I saw him. Not the kid, someone else. A man. Standing perfectly still beneath the next street lamp. He wore a sharp black suit, crisp, clean, like he'd just stepped out of a vintage funeral photo. No dirt, no dust, no signs he'd walked through a single leaf or blade of grass. He didn't smile, not yet, just watched me. Then took a few steps forward and extended a hand. "I'm Mr. Bridgers," he said. His voice was low, smooth, too perfect. "It's a pleasure to meet you." I didn't move, didn't blink. Every alarm in my brain screamed in perfect unison. Rule 2. If you see a man in a black suit, do not speak to him. If he asks you a question, do not answer. Mr. Bridgers waited, his hand still outstretched. Slowly, I backed up. He tilted his head. "Well," he said, tone tightening, "that wasn't quite polite, was it?" My mouth opened, reflex, panic, pure instinct, but then, "Don't answer." A voice behind me, I turned. Fast. Preston, standing with his flashlight in one hand like a sword, the other tucked calmly into his belt. He didn't look surprised or angry, just tired, like a man who'd seen this before. "Walk with me," he said, like we were out for a casual Tuesday stroll. And I walked. Mr. Bridger's voice grew sharper behind us. "Rude," he barked. "No manners, you children think you can ignore me?" But Preston didn't flinch. He just kept walking, leading me down the gravel path like he had all night. "You didn't say anything to him, did you?" he asked. I shook my head. "No," I whispered. "I didn't." "Good," he said. "Then we should be fine." I glanced back once. Mr. Bridgers was still standing under the lamp. But now he wasn't yelling, just watching. Still as a statue. Preston kept walking like nothing had happened, like it was just another day at the office. "Okay, what the hell is going on?" I asked. "Is this some elaborate prank? I saw the boy. Is Eddie hiding in the bushes with a walkie-talkie or—" Preston stopped. He turned, looked at me. "The boy?" he asked. "You saw him?" "Yeah," I said. "Gray, smiling, whistling, looked like he crawled out of a Tim Burton movie." Preston let out a slow breath. "So you saw the little rascal, huh?" He didn't sound surprised. He started walking again. "He's the least dangerous one," he said. "Annoying, sure, jumpy, but he doesn't really hurt anyone." His voice dipped lower. "But the other's Ivy." He looked back at me, eyes heavy. "They remember what they lost." He paused, "and they want it back." Then, without waiting for my reaction, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, his flashlight flickering once before vanishing. And I just stood there, alone. Again. The wind stirred. Somewhere in the dark, a branch creaked, and for once, sarcasm couldn't save me. The second Preston vanished into the dark like some cryptic cowboy ghost, I was left alone with my thoughts, which, let's be real, were spiraling faster than a clogged toilet at a frat house. I stood there gripping the handle of my broom like it was holy, trying to process what had just happened. Child-shaped nightmare? Check. Suit-wearing death demon? Double check. Old man casually confirming ghost lore like it's weather chat? Triple check with a side of nope. I exhaled, slow and shaky, and forced myself to keep sweeping. What else was I supposed to do? The rules said follow them, not go cry in the bushes. So I did what I always do when I'm overwhelmed. I cleaned something aggressively. A rage sweep, if you will. The paths were mostly clear by then. Just a few crushed leaves and some mystery lint I refused to analyze too closely. I made my way around the east end, near the tall hedges that divided Section 2 from the old family plots. That's when I heard it. A sound so soft I thought it was wind at first. But it wasn't wind, it was crying. Not the dramatic horror movie wailing kind. No, this was worse. This sounded real. The kind of broken, muffled sobs you're not supposed to hear. Like you're intruding on someone else's grief. Like you walked in on a moment meant only for the dead. It stopped me cold. Broom halfway to the ground, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. The sound was coming from somewhere close. Section 2. I turned toward it, just slightly, every part of me on edge. And then, like muscle memory kicking in, I reached for the rule sheet. My fingertips found the now thoroughly wrinkled paper in my back pocket like it was a security blanket laced with warnings. I scanned the rules with the speed of a student skimming before a pop quiz. Rule 5. You may hear crying from grave 119. Do not comfort. If it continues past midnight, place a single copper coin on the headstone and leave immediately. I read it twice, then a third time. My brain processed every word, but my stomach, it dropped straight through the gravel. Oh hell no, I muttered. I backed away from Section 2 like it was contagious. And then I pulled out my phone, my blessed little smartphone with 14% battery and not a single helpful app for this nightmare. I set an alarm for 11:59 p.m. because if I was going to leave a coin at exactly midnight, I needed a head start. I glanced back toward the crying, but I didn't move toward it. I didn't investigate. I sure as hell didn't shout, "Hello, are you okay?" like every idiot in a horror movie. Instead, I walked away. And yeah, the cry followed me for a while. Not louder, not closer, just present, like it was stitched into the air, woven into the shadows, breathing down the back of my neck in stereo sadness. But I didn't look, didn't speak. I let her cry. Whatever she was, whatever she'd lost, I wasn't going to be the next face she saw. When the alarm buzzed in my pocket, it made me jump so hard I nearly beamed myself with the broom handle. My heart was already in high alert mode. It didn't need the help. Midnight. Showtime. I pulled the coin I'd pocketed earlier from the shed, a grubby old penny, sticky with God knows what, and made my way back toward Section 2. Every step felt wrong. The kind of wrong that hums in your bones, like something's watching from behind the veil of trees. I walked fast but quiet, like my boots knew the assignment. Gravel crunched beneath me, too loud in the otherwise silent world. Then I saw her. I froze. She was curled beside one of the older headstones, chipped and slanted, worn down like it had been gnawed on by time itself. She lay there sobbing, shoulders shaking, face hidden in her arms. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. And then she moved, lifted her head, looked straight at me. My breath caught like it hit barbed wire. We locked eyes, or we would have if she had any. Her face was a horror I'll never unsee. Skin smeared with ash and streaked with wet dirt. No eyes, just hollow, scooped-out sockets, gaping and black. Her mouth trembled, not in sadness, no, like she was trying to remember how to smile. The crying stopped. Everything stopped. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just reached into my jacket pocket with shaking fingers and pulled out the coin. I stepped forward. 1 step, 2. Then knelt slowly and placed the penny gently on the headstone. She looked down at it, then back at me. Then, without a word, she reached out, picked it up with fingers stiff and bruised, bones too visible beneath thin, rotting skin. Her mouth twitched again. Then she stood, not fluidly, not like a person, like a puppet whose strings had been cut and tied wrong. She turned and walked into the dark. With each step, her form blurred, melting into the night like steam off a wet grave. Until she was gone, I exhaled so hard I nearly collapsed. My legs weren't legs anymore, they were pudding. And my hands, shaking like I'd just finished a haunted marathon. I picked up the broom from where I'd dropped it near a tree and dragged myself toward the shed. Legs aching, brain screaming. I'd followed the rule. I'd done it right. I was safe. But something told me I was only just getting started. I leaned the broom against the shed and pulled out the rule sheet again, creased and fingerprinted and starting to tear along the fold. My finger traced each one, lips moving silently as I recounted them all like a prayer. Whistling? Survived. Barely. Mr. Bridgers? Ignored. Thanks to Preston. The crying woman? Coin delivered. So far so good. But that feeling, that creep, that clinging dread, it hadn't left. It clung to me like smoke, like fingers wrapping around the back of my neck. Something was still coming. I could feel it. And something told me midnight wasn't the worst part of this job. After the eyeless ghost woman took her penny and moonwalked into the darkness like that was a normal thing people did at midnight, I figured I'd earned at least one break. But no. Apparently, haunted cemeteries don't believe in union hours. I leaned against the shed, catching my breath and muttering to myself like a street prophet. You followed the rule. You're fine. She's gone. You're still alive, technically. I didn't want to check the rules again, but I did. Rule 1, at exactly 1 a.m., place a fresh bouquet of white lilies on grave 302, Eleanor May Finch. Do not use roses. Do not be late. I looked at the time. 12:50 a.m. Cool, 10 minutes to go play delivery girl for a dead lady with floral preferences. I pushed open the shed door. The hinges creaked like a warning, but I was too exhausted to care. I reached for the top shelf where Eddie said the flowers were stored. White lilies, resting in a metal bucket of water that smelled vaguely like mold. I grabbed the bouquet, crumpling the rule sheet into my jacket pocket, like it might stop radiating existential threat if I just bent it enough. The lilies dangled awkwardly in my hand as I stepped back into the night air. Somewhere far off, something howled. It didn't sound like a dog. I crossed the gravel path, making my way towards Section 4, just past the row of maples that looked like they'd been planted specifically to cast horror movie shadows. The street lamps above flickered, offering me just enough light to be unsettled, not enough to be useful. Graves were numbered, thankfully. Little brass plaques at the bases of the headstones, most half covered in moss. I moved quickly, muttering numbers under my breath like a librarian on the verge of a breakdown. 296, 297, 298, 299, then nothing. The next grave? Blank. No number, no name. Just a moss-covered slab of erosion and disappointment. I blinked. Okay, maybe the next one. I rushed to the following grave. Also blank. The one after that? Unmarked. The next? Worn to illegibility. What the hell? I whispered, flipping the bouquet in my hand like that would help. I darted between headstones now, flashlight jittering over names that were too faded or too long dead to offer answers. Eleanor May Finch. I said her name like a mantra. Like a spell, like repeating it might conjure her damn grave. But there was nothing. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking as I checked the time. 1:02 a.m. I froze. I had been searching for over 10 minutes. I was late. The rule said exactly 1 a.m. Not around 1, not give or take a grave, not fashionably dead. I missed it. And that's when I heard it. Crack and crunch. Not from above, from below. The sound of shifting earth. Of roots snapping, of something pushing up through the dirt with purpose and rage. My breath hitched. I turned, flashlight shaking, and caught movement 2 rows over. A hand, pale, wrinkled, fingernails cracked and yellow, clawing its way out of the ground like a flower blooming backward. Then another hand, then the crown of a head, skin sagging over a skull, hair matted and white, soaked in mud. It was like watching someone be unborn. And I couldn't move. My legs were cement, my lungs full of cement, my soul probably already halfway to a new zip code. She pulled herself up in jerks and spasms like her joints didn't remember how to joint. A nightgown, or what used to be one, clung to her thin body, rotted and shredded from years underground. Her eyes were open. Snap. I stepped on a twig, louder than a gunshot. Her head snapped toward me with the precision of a guillotine. And then she sprinted, not shuffled, sprinted. I screamed too, full-throated, no shame, final girl in the third act kind of scream, and took off. The lilies, gone. Airborne somewhere in the dead grass behind me. I ran to the shed, because my brilliant, panic-soaked brain decided that a cramped wooden box full of rakes and regrets was the smart choice. I slammed the door shut, locking the rusted latch with shaking fingers. The air inside was damp, mildewed, stinking of old earth and spiderwebs and maybe one extremely confused raccoon. But it was shelter, for about 2 seconds. Then came the sound. Screaming, laughing, sobbing, all at once. All hers. She clawed at the walls like a wild animal. Her nails dragged deep gouges into the wood, shrieking against it like a chalkboard. I backed up, pressing myself to the far wall, eyes wide, whispering to myself like a lunatic. Just rules. Just a prank. Just a test. Just a prank. The roof shook, the walls groaned, and then the rain came. Hard. It pounded the tin roof with the fury of a god with anger issues, drowning out her howls. At this point, I was soaking wet. The roof didn't help me much. I closed my eyes, curled in on myself, rocked and waited. Then silence. I leaned toward the cracks between the planks, barely daring to breathe. She was gone. No footsteps, no shrieking, not even the lingering stench of rotting perfume, just rainwater sliding off the roof in fat, ugly drops right on me. I waited another 10 minutes before I opened the door. The cemetery had changed. Everything glistened, soggy and steaming. The silence was thick, sticky, a fog curled around the paths like ghost fingers. My skin crawled. I stumbled outside, wet hair clinging to my face, mud streaking my boots. Somewhere nearby, a lily lay in the dirt. I had missed the grave. I had broken the rule. And the dead? They weren't as forgiving as the living. After the whole chased by an undead granny because I missed flower hour fiasco, I figured the worst had to be over. I stood in the middle of Red Hill Cemetery, soaked to the bone, caked in mud, and one emotional breakdown away from turning feral. My hands were trembling. My ankle throbbed from the sprint, and I was pretty sure I'd bruised my spleen trying to outrun a corpse. Still breathing, still sarcastic. Though the ratio was shifting toward sheer survival mode, that's when I remembered something. Rule 3. I hadn't checked it in a while, but I didn't need to. Between 2 and 3 a.m., avoid looking into any reflective surface, including puddles. Especially puddles. If you see something that isn't you, ignore it. Do not react. I fished out the crumpled, soggy rule sheet again. The ink had started to blur, but the words were still legible enough to feel like a threat. I glanced at my phone. 2:12 a.m. Great. I had 48 minutes left in the mirror dimension danger hour. I just needed to lay low, avoid shiny stuff, and not have another panic attack. That was the plan. And like all great plans, it fell apart in under 5 minutes. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. I took a shovel I found leaning in the corner of the shed, rusted, heavy, weirdly comforting. My boots squelched with every step, the ground soaked and spongy beneath me. Then I heard it. Not a scream, not a voice, just the soft, subtle crunch of gravel behind me. I spun around, nothing there, but when I looked down, there was a puddle. I didn't mean to look into it, I really didn't, but my eyes flicked downward in reflex, and that's when I saw her. Me. Her skin was pale, wet, her hair hung in limp, stringy strands across her face, my face, but her eyes were dead. Not tired, not hollow, dead. Her lips were cracked, jaw slack. Dirt clung to her cheeks in streaks like dried blood. I froze. My heart stopped mid-beat. Then she moved. Not a shift, not a blink. She lunged straight through the puddle like it wasn't water at all, but a paper-thin layer between worlds. Her hand wrapped around my ankle with inhuman force. Cold, wet, wrong. I screamed, fell forward. My other foot slid in halfway like the puddle had turned into a vacuum, pulling me in. The water stretched unnaturally, deeper than it had any right to be. Mud clung to my knees, cold seeped into my bones. She was dragging me down. I clawed at the gravel, at grass, at anything, fingers slipping, useless. And then, a hand grabbed my arm from behind. "Hold on, kid." It was Preston. Old man adrenaline apparently hits different. He hooked both arms under my armpits and pulled. My boots kicked, my fingers scraped. I screamed like someone was peeling my soul off bone, but she, other me, was stronger. And hungry. She opened her mouth wide, too wide, and sank her jagged teeth into my ankle. It was like being stabbed with dry ice and broken glass. The pain shot up my leg, white hot and freezing at the same time. I howled, kicked with my free foot, caught her square in the jaw. Didn't faze her. She just growled. Then something worse happened. She let go of me and grabbed Preston. Her hand snaked past my waist and latched onto his wrist like a bear trap. "No," I screamed, twisting, trying to yank him back, but his feet slipped, his grip faltered, and in one violent tug, he was gone, headfirst into the puddle. She was on him in seconds. Her teeth sank into his neck with a sickening crunch, blood blooming in slow motion like ink in water. He screamed, then gurgled, then disappeared, pulled into the depths like he'd never existed at all. I scrambled back, digging myself out of the puddle one agonizing inch at a time, sobbing, my leg burning like it had been marked. And then I ran. I ran until my lungs tore, until my vision blurred, until I could no longer feel the rain on my skin because I wasn't sure I even had skin anymore. I needed help. Answers. I needed Eddie. His truck skidded into the cemetery 20 minutes later, headlights cutting through the fog like a knife. Gravel sprayed as he slammed on the brakes and jumped out barefoot, pajamas soaked in sweat, hair a full horror show. When he saw me, limping, bloodied, mud-streaked, his face went bone white. "What happened?" he asked, voice tight. I didn't answer, just pointed. We walked together toward the puddle, slowly, cautiously. My blood was still there, a smeared trail from where I'd clawed my way free. The puddle was calm now. The air around it felt off, heavy, like sound didn't want to travel there. I felt it in my teeth, in my spine. Eddie squinted at it, jaw clenched. "Ivy," he said softly, like he already knew the answer. "What time is it?" I checked my phone. 3:07 a.m. My chest caved in the moment I saw Eddie's face. "No," I whispered. No, he's still in there. We can grab him. Both of us. We can pull him out." He shook his head. "Ivy, it's past 3. It hit me like another bite to the leg. I stepped forward anyway. My foot dipped in the water. I leaned over the puddle and... there he was, Preston. Under the surface, like he was trapped beneath glass. His palms slapped against the underside of the puddle. His mouth moved, screaming something I couldn't hear. And behind him, she was still there. The other me. She had her teeth buried in his side, yanking at flesh like it was cloth. His eyes were wide, dying, desperate. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I just watched. Watched as Preston was eaten alive,